Hey, it's me, Vicki Marie. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Please remember to like and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to receive more videos like this. Okay, so my name's Vicki Marie. I'm here in mainland Spain and I'm here to tell you a story today about these two little girls. Now we're going back 22 years in the story of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, two lovely 10-year-old girls that were taken out of this world by the evil that is Ian Huntley. Now this is a case that shocked the world. So this happened, Holly and Jessica went missing on the 4th of August. So we are 22 years on now to when they went missing. Now, the reason for doing this video is we must never forget Holly and Jessica. We must never forget what evil people like Ian Huntley can do, how they can destroy lives. And we must not let these sort of things happen again. So let's chat. So there's quite a lot to talk to you about in this video. So I'm going to tell the story as best I can. I cannot fit everything into it. I hope I do Holly and Jessica justice, because that is the whole point of reminding people about them. Remember them, remember their name, remember their faces. Never forget. That is the point of doing this video. So I hope I do them justice, and my thoughts are with their families and also with the family of Ian, which I will talk about later. So this took place in Soham in the United Kingdom. It's a town and civil parish in the district of East Cambridgeshire in the UK. Now it's a very, let's have a look at it. It's a very sleepy place. You know, it is one of those places, how often do we hear it? Oh, can't believe anything like that could happen here. How often do we hear that? Thing is, if you live in an inner city, or if you live in New York, or capital city, Melbourne, London, big cities like Manchester, etc. There's so many people, so many different kinds of people. You sort of almost expect things to happen. Soham is not like that. Soham is a tiny little village. I think there's only 10,000, the population, 12,000. In 2021, the population was only 12,336. So I'm imagining that when this happened 22 years ago, it was an even smaller population. Do you imagine, out of a tiny population like that, you would not expect someone like Ian Huntley, the eventual sort of the baddie, if you like, in this story, to be there. Why was he there? That's what we're going to look at. Unfortunately, he was not from there. He came from somewhere else. And unfortunately, evil came to live in Soham. And it was like a perfect storm, if you like, everything conspiring to bring these poor little girls into the path of a killer. So we can see where it is. It's actually not that far from London, but of course it's in Cambridgeshire, which is a lovely part of the world. It's like very green. It's just, as I say, it's the sort of place that I'm sure people would say, oh, nothing like that would ever happen here. But unfortunately, of course, it did. So the year is 2022. Sorry, I nearly said 22. The year is 2002. The date is the 4th of August. For once, it's a hot summer in the UK. You know, we don't always get hot summers in the UK, but this particular day, it was a very nice hot summer's day. It was a Sunday. And at 11:45, Jessica Chapman, who was 10 years old at the time, left her home in Brook Street, Soham, for a barbecue at the home of her best friend, Holly Wells. So let's have a look. So it was Jessica who left her home to go to Holly's house. So this is Jessica, only 10 years old. You know, maybe she wasn't 10 on that photo, I'm not sure. But, you know, young, innocent, just enjoying life, nice hot summer's day, decided to go and see her friend Holly Wells. So she went round, Jessica went round to Holly's house, which was just around the corner. And she told her parents she was going to give her friend a necklace, which was engraved with the letter H. And she had bought this for Holly in a recent trip to Menorca, family holiday. And Holly was her very, very best friend. Anyway, those two girls and their other friend, Natalie Parr, played computer games and listened to music for about half an hour before Natalie returned home. And often, you know, I wonder, and I'm sure Natalie has wondered, I'm sure a lot of people have wondered, if Natalie would have stayed with the girls, would there have been a different result? Or would Natalie have become a victim as well? You know, we just, obviously we don't know, but it's like there's moments in life, isn't there? You know, decisions that people make. Maybe the decision to go home, the girls, the decision to go and buy some sweets. Just split-second decisions that we make in our lives that just can change the course of it completely. Anyway, by 3:15, both the girls had changed into distinctive Manchester United football shirts. One was Holly's, the one that Holly was wearing, and the other one belonged to her older brother, Oliver. And at 5:04 p.m, Holly's mother, Nicola, this is a picture of Nicola with Holly when Holly was younger, took a picture of the two girls. And this was very fateful, wasn't it? Because we know, because of the time on the clock, it was exactly 4 minutes past 5 when Nicola Wells took this photo of Holly and Jessica. And this became, of course, you know, the photo that would haunt us all on our screens. Even David Beckham, who was playing for Manchester United at the time, ended up joining in the appeal to find these girls, because shortly after this, Holly and Jessica vanished. You know, remember that, vanished off the face of the earth. But we know, don't we, from other cases, people do not just vanish off the face of the earth, of course. They're somewhere, and Jessica and Holly were somewhere. Unfortunately, it wasn't in a good place. After they'd had that photo taken, they returned to playing upstairs in their house round about 6:10, and they also ate dinner with the other guests. I do believe the photo was taken of the Manchester United shirts was taken after dinner, and then around about 6:10 they went back playing upstairs in Holly's bedroom. Then at 8 p.m, Nicola Wells, Holly's mum, entered her daughter's bedroom to invite the girls to say goodbye to their guests. Only to do, because they'd been having a barbecue, only to discover both children were missing. She was alarmed, so she told the girls, Holly's father, Kevin. So this is Kevin Wells. I always think Kevin looked quite, well, certainly at this time, was around the time of the funeral or the court case, always looks quite haunted, bless him. I just want to, I'll say it often through this video. My thoughts are always with the families of these victims, because of course they are victims as well. And I just don't know how they manage, to put one foot in front of the other. And Kevin in particular, he sort of seems to have tried to deal with it by setting up, by doing positive things. He reminds me a bit of Gabby Petito's father, Joseph Petito, who set up the Gabby Petito Foundation. People deal with grief differently. Some people go very within themselves. That's what I've noticed since I've been covering true crime. And other people just have to do something with their pain, with their anger, but something positive. And I think Kevin is one of those. He's set up bereavement groups, etc., and tried to make something positive out of the loss of his daughter. Okay. So they searched the house and nearby streets, and then came up the curfew. Their daughter had a curfew of 8:30, so no matter what, she always had to be in by 8:30 p.m. That curfew time came and went. So Nicola phoned Jessica's parents, Sharon and Leslie, to ask if the girls were there, only to learn that they too were worried because their youngest daughter had not returned home. So I think I'd probably been on the brink of getting in touch with Holly's parents, because they were wondering why Jessica had been so long. She probably had a similar type of curfew. So panic ensued, really. So they all went to search the house. Well, they searched through the house, searched the nearby streets, and when they realised that they weren't at Nicola's house either, then they were both reported missing by their parents at 9:55 p.m. The search for Holly and Jessica in the 13 days of their disappearance has been described as one of the most intensive and extensive in British criminal history. Police released CCTV footage. They did a reconstruction. There were many alleged sightings and false leads. I think we should be grateful there wasn't much social media at the time, or no doubt many conspiracy theories would have emerged. I know that the parents did get a lot of trolling even then in those days. I don't know how people trolled them, by email or by message. I think Facebook was around, but every social media was in its infancy. So, I still will never understand why people feel that they have to be horrible to families, bereaved families, or families with a missing child or a missing loved one without any justification. I really don't understand that. Anyway, let's have a look at the photos of the CCTV. So it was known that they'd gone to the local shop to buy some sweets because this was it's very haunting, that, isn't it? Just, nobody around. There's the two little girls going off to buy their sweets innocently. Oh my God. It's just, you just want to reach out and pluck them out of that picture, don't you? Send them back home. Go home. But unfortunately, that's where they were. So the police knew that that's where they'd gone. They knew more or less where they'd gone, but after that they did not know. And the police immediately felt that the girls had been kidnapped, and there were many reports of people having seen them. You know, as you do get people, well-meaning people normally, that think they've seen them or they've seen somebody like them, etc. Now let's have a look at the reconstruction. This is very sad as well, though, very emotive. To see these girls looking so much like Holly and Jessica, and also just how tiny they were, really, in their football shirts, going off to buy some sweets, best friends, you know, having had a lovely day, lovely Sunday, hot summer day barbecue, having had a great day.
Two child actresses retrace the last known movements of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman from Holly's home via quiet back streets to Soham High Street. The two 10-year-old girls went missing last Sunday evening, and police believe they're still alive. This afternoon, the small Cambridgeshire town came to a standstill.
Yeah, because the police were convinced that they had been kidnapped. And so there was still a possibility that they might be alive. But you can see this little village, you know, it's a tiny, sleepy little village. Where did they go to?
Still, as friends and relatives retrace the girls' route. Police.
Now, I think this is supposed to be, whether it actually is Ian Huntley's car when they did this reconstruction. This was a week after they disappeared, I think. But anyway, not sure.
Hope the reconstruction will jog someone's memory. Two child actresses retrace the last known movements of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman from Holly's home via quiet back streets to Soham High Street. The two 10-year-old girls went missing last Sunday evening, and police believe they're still alive. This afternoon, the small Cambridgeshire town came to a standstill as friends.
So you notice that Jessica, I mean, obviously this is the actress playing Jessica, but she had braids in her hair because, of course, she'd just been on holiday and she'd had braids done, bless her.
And relatives retrace the girls' route. Police hope the reconstruction will jog someone's memory.
So it truly is awful, isn't it? Because these were two little girls living their best life, you know, literally having a great time, as they should be doing at 10 years old, carefree, enjoying their time together. You know, just disgusting, actually, that was taken away from them, and also their future was taken away not only from them, but of course taken away from their parents as well. Anyway, Holly and Jessica's parents appeared at a press conference to make a public appeal. And let's have a look at a photo from that. You know, whenever I see them at these press conferences that they did at the time, literally just fill up with emotion, because you can see, you know, sometimes people, you know, there's been people where people have been missing and people go. We watched recently Stephen Stearns, didn't we? You know, talking about Madeline Soto after she disappeared. You can so tell the difference between genuine grief, like you can see here, just in their faces. They're haunted. They, I call it blasted with grief. Grief does blast you, you know, when you're, and I think it's worse when you don't know what's happened to someone, because what will have been going through their families' minds then, even worse than after, when you know that they've been found deceased, because at this particular time you wouldn't have known what's happening to them now. You're hoping that they're still alive, of course, but what's happening to them? Are they being abused? You know, are they safe? Are they happy? Are they crying? Are they crying for you? You know, what can you do to help them? You must feel helpless, because your instinct as a parent, of course, is to help your child. And when you're totally helpless like that, just don't know what's happened to them, and anything in the world could be happening to them in that moment as you're sat there. And it's just, the thoughts that be going through your head constantly. I would have to be sedated. I know that for a fact. And so, yeah, that is what grief looks like. You can just see the difference between, and my heart just goes out to them at that time. That must have just truly been just the worst time. And don't get me wrong, of course it was horrible, because eventually the poor girls were found deceased, and that's awful. But I do think this, wondering what's happening to them. I mean, you still have some hope there. That's the only thing. You'd still have some hope that they might be found alive. But all the same, you would just be constantly going over in your head what was happening to them. In that moment that you were sat in the police conference, what was happening to your daughter? Were they crying for you, etc.? Absolutely. Just, unimaginable. How awful to have to go through that. Anyway, amongst all the false sightings, I'm not going to go, there were loads of false sightings, there were loads of false alarms, but we won't go into all those, because it just go on too long, to be honest. But also, it's not important to the final result. Amidst all these false sightings, the police's attention had turned to the last person who saw them, and that, of course, was Ian Huntley. And Ian Huntley was the caretaker at local college. Just looking at him there, he's trying to look sort of all innocent and concerned. But I know we've got the benefit of hindsight, but you look at it and it just doesn't, it all looks false, doesn't it? But Ian worked at the local college as he was the senior janitor or caretaker or something. And how he'd got that job, we're going to look at that later. He should never have had that job, because Ian Huntley, he already had a history of abusing children. So he should never have been given a job at a school. But what he had done is he'd moved away from where he'd lived before, probably for that reason. And of course, it was a different time then. Nowadays, I think you'd be struggling to hide a record, even if you moved out of the area, because of the checks that are done for anyone who's going to be working anywhere near children. But unfortunately for Holly and Jessica, these checks were not done in this particular instance. And Ian got this job at the college. And he went to live there in Soham from Grimsby. I'm going to show you in a minute the distance between the two places. And he had informed investigators on the 5th of August that he had a brief conversation with both the girls on his doorstep the previous afternoon. And according to him, Holly and Jessica were as happy as Larry, and they briefly inquired as to whether his partner, Maxine Carr, now Maxine, Ian was 28 at the time. His partner, Maxine, let's have a look at her. She had got a job at Holly and Jessica's school. She had moved there to Soham with Ian Huntley as his partner. And then she got a job at their school as a teaching assistant. And it was a temporary job, and she had applied to stay working there. Anyway, apparently she did not get the permanent job. And Huntley said that they had inquired as to whether Maxine had got the job, because they loved Maxine. They really liked her. I think Maxine, she was quite childlike herself. And men like Huntley, they gravitate towards childlike women, don't they? You know, because, you know, at the end of the day, Huntley really, his interest lay in very, very young women or girls. But of course, he couldn't do that publicly, so he gravitated towards a woman, because she was, I think she was younger than him, but she was in her early 20s. He chose a woman who was quite childlike herself. That's the only way, you know, I've seen that happen with people I know who found out their ex-husband was actually a child lover. But that particular person that I know, she's very childlike too, small in stature, very slim. You know, if you didn't see her face properly, she could be a child. You know, in her face you can tell she's an adult, but her actual build, etc., very childlike. And I think you know, if you saw her in a poor light, you would think she was a child. And I think that about Maxine. I think she's got a lot of childlike qualities. I think this is what these men do. They pick a woman, if you like, and I suppose it works the other way, because not only men that can be paedophiles, is it? But they pick someone because they can't openly have a relationship with a child, so they pick someone who's childlike. So he said that when he had replied that she did not get the job, one of the girls had said, "Oh, tell her we're sorry," and then they had both walked along College Street towards a bridge heading towards Clay Street. Now, Ian Huntley and Maxine Carr lived in like a tied accommodation from the college. You know, they lived in College Close, and that was accommodation that came along with the job. That house has now been razed to the ground. So who were this couple and how had they ended up living in Soham? Now, Ian Huntley was born in Grimsby, which is in Lincolnshire, and he was born there on the 31st of January 1974, and he was the first of two sons born to Kevin Huntley and his wife Linda, and the second was Wayne, who was born in August 1975. So only a year difference between Ian and his younger brother Wayne. Now let's have a look. I want to have a look at the distance. Yeah, hang on, sorry. So here's Soham. If we go into this, can I make it bigger? Lincolnshire is here. Grimsby is here, just near the Humber River. Scunthorpe, Sheffield is over here. Grimsby is it's on the coast, isn't it, by the look of it? I've never been to Grimsby. I don't think I want to go, to be honest. But they'd moved then to, where are we? Further down, further down, further down. Let me just find Soham again. Oh, sorry. Here we go. So yeah, they'd moved from Grimsby, which is up here. See if I can get them both up on there. So and Grimsby was up here, wasn't it? There. See if I can see them both on there. Struggling to get the two of them on there. I think there's Soham. Yeah, I'm struggling to get both of them to come up on there. But I think you get the idea. So here's Grimsby. They'd moved down here too. So you can see it's not that far away. But it was far enough away so that nobody knew Ian Huntley, did they, in Soham. So he'd applied for that job. He must have seen it somewhere. Don't know how he found the job or if somebody told him about it, or as far as I know, he didn't have any friends in Soham, etc. But, you know, and they moved down there. So nobody knew him there because, you know, it was all getting a bit heated for him where he was up in Grimsby because of the offences he'd committed there, which we're going to look at in a moment. So yeah, he was born there in Grimsby on the 31st of January, and then a year later his parents had a son, Wayne, and he'll be important in this story. You'll see in a moment. So now it's said, of course, these are all things that come out after Ian Huntley is known as being a killer. So we've got to take things a little bit with a pinch of salt. We don't know what he was really like when he was a child, but it's said that he was timid and he was something of a mother's boy. I just think they always blame the mother, to be honest. You know, what about his father? Anyway, in his early years, apparently he frequently threw tantrums in order to get his mother's attention, and childhood friends later remarked that he seemed to be afraid of his stern father. His school performance was average. He was reportedly a loner, an oddball, and an attention seeker, and he became a target for bullies. However, he did form a few friendships, apparently, via a shared interest in computer games. Now, the ironic thing is he loved football, and guess who he was a supporter of? Manchester United. I think that's a terrible irony in the view of what those poor girls were wearing that day. Anyway, he joined the Air Training Corps in at the age of 13, and that fueled an interest in aeroplanes. Now, he'd had an interest in aeroplanes ever since he was a child, and he did consider a future career with the Royal Air Force, and he developed a hobby of plane spotting. Now, this seems to be how he became familiar with RAF Lakenheath and the area around it, which let me just see, which becomes key later because that's where eventually the girls' bodies were found. Now, if we have a look, let's go back and have a look at Soham and the surrounding areas. So we can see Soham there and Lakenheath. When I think, oh God, I hate these maps. Is it this way? Oh, Kingfisher's Bridge Nature Reserve. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. I mean, I think this would be a beautiful place to visit. Now, where is Lakenheath? Newmarket. It's a little bit of a way away. It's not right on the border. I think it's up here somewhere. There it is. RAF Lakenheath. Now, apparently it was during his, and here's Soham. So a little bit of a way away. Apparently it was his plane spotting that meant that he gave him a knowledge of this area of Lakenheath and RAF Lakenheath, because that is where eventually he did take those poor two little girls. Anyway, he formed several relationships with girls. He fancied himself as a bit of a ladies' man, apparently, but each of these girls was at least 1 year younger than himself, and none of these relationships lasted longer than a few weeks. So he finished his schooling, he had 5 GCSEs, he chose not to enroll in college, and he decided to find employment. So he worked in a succession of menial jobs, but he seldom held any job for long either. He was scrupulous about his personal appearance and personal hygiene, and thought he was quite successful with women. In 1994, in June, he started dating a local girl, 18-year-old Claire Evans. He met her in the local Heinz factory when he worked there, and only 2 months later, they got married at Grimsby Registry Office. However, the marriage was very short-lived because of his volatile temper, which surfaced within days of their marriage. Within a month, he had begun to regularly sex assault her, abuse her in many other ways. He even locked her in the house. He cut off her hair, and on one occasion he beat her so badly she actually had a miscarriage. So after several weeks of mistreatment, so very early into the marriage, she announced she was leaving him. And you know what he did in an attempt? This is something that these psychopaths, these coercive control people, sociopaths, whatever you want to call them, this is what my ex-partner did to me. In an attempt to emotionally blackmail his wife into remaining with him, he feigned an illness. Then he was drooling and faked an epileptic fit. This was a distraction tactic he later employed as well when he was accused of Holly and Jessica's murder. And we'll see that this was his way, wasn't it? This was his way of detracting from what Twonky was to, pretend he was ill. Try and make her feel bad for leaving him. But oh my God, that was the best thing this woman ever did. Claire, you did so well to get away from this guy. But unfortunately for Huntley, things got a little bit even more worse because Claire started a relationship with Wayne, his younger brother, a year younger, and they eventually got married. And Ian Huntley never forgave his brother Wayne and never forgave Claire for what he considered, of course, was a betrayal. But maybe he should have thought that maybe if he wouldn't have, cut her hair off and battered her and done all those awful things that he did to her, maybe she wouldn't have left him for his brother. Maxine was also born in Grimsby on the 16th of February 1977, and she had met Ian Huntley in a nightclub in Grimsby in 1999 when she was 22 and he was 25. Now, the age difference between 22 and 25, it's not much, is it really? But I do feel that Maxine is quite a childlike person. Anyway, again, Ian Huntley was supposed to have been emotionally abusive during their relationship, but regardless, they later got engaged. They moved in together just 4 weeks after meeting, and then they relocated from Grimsby to Soham when Ian Huntley got that job at the local college. I mean, how did he get that job? Because what had happened was after his marriage collapsed, he'd become more nomadic. He'd moved from one rented flat to the next, changed jobs frequently. He had a succession of short relationships, one of which was with a 15-year-old girl. And that's when he fathered his daughter, Samantha Brian, in 1998. In 2016, Samantha, we're going to talk about Samantha at the end of this video. Samantha found out in 2016, she revealed that she accidentally discovered the identity of her biological father while she was working on a school project. Could you imagine that? When she was 14, bless her. God bless her. And we'll be hearing from Samantha later. She's going to tell us her own story. A subsequent inquiry revealed that between 1995 and 2001, Ian Huntley had sexual contact with 11 underage girls, ranging between 11 and 17 years old. This man was just like an accident waiting to happen. Well, it had already, not an accident. He was going out hunting young girls. He was grooming them. He was having sex relationships with them. When he found Maxine, he found somebody that he could be respectable with, because she was at least 22 and not 11. God. Oh my God, what an awful man. So, although there had been no, he hadn't, up to now, he hadn't actually killed anyone. He was going down a slippery slope, wasn't he? I mean, he was only in his 20s and he'd already done all this. That's why he moved from Grimsby to Soham. Anyway, on January the 7th, 1998, he appeared in court after being charged with robbing a neighbour's house. So add, burglary to his crimes. That May, he was charged with the rape of an 18-year-old girl in Grimsby. Neither case proceeded to court because of lack of evidence. But the allegation of RAPE did taint him substantially. So I think that's probably the catalyst for him leaving Grimsby and going to Soham. But his record, well, he wasn't convicted of those two things, but nothing ever came to light when he applied for this job. Meanwhile, Maxine Carr became a teaching assistant at St Andrew's Primary School, and that is where she met Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. She was their teaching assistant, and the terrible stage was set for what was going to happen. So what had happened on that day, on the 4th of August, unbeknown to their parents, the girls, at around 6:15 p.m, the girls had left the Wells house without informing anybody, deciding to buy some sweets from a vending machine at the local sports centre. And when they were returning home, they'd walked past Huntley and Carr's house on College Close. Now, he must have thought it was Christmas when those girls came up. That's how I feel. I feel like he felt he was entitled to do something to those girls, because reputedly Maxine was in fact visiting her mother in Grimsby, and they'd had a terrible argument on the phone. So it sounds like they had quite a volatile relationship. I mean, I've read things that Maxine was, doing other things she shouldn't have been doing, but I don't know. It doesn't matter really. It still doesn't give him a reason to get so angry that he murdered two 10-year-old girls. But I think it's generally accepted that he was seething with anger and jealousy. And then who popped up? Holly and Jessica. And he just focused all his anger, all his hate on them. In my opinion, that's what happened. It's like this, I hope there is a sliding doors world out there somewhere where those girls didn't go past his house, they just went home, they carried on their lives. Maybe there is. Maybe there's a parallel universe somewhere where Holly and Jessica, did do that. I'm sort of a half believer in that. If you look at the size of the universe, it's not unreasonable to think that maybe that is the case. I hope so. But unfortunately, in this world, in this universe that we live in, or this world that we live on, they did. They went past his house. They must have entered in some sort of conversation with him. Now, it's possible that he was outside the house at the time washing his dog, like he said he was, because I don't think the girls would have gone up and actually knocked on the door. But, we'll never know that. Only Ian Huntley knows what actually happened, and he's not talking. So he evidently lured the girls into the house somehow, and he told them, he did admit that he told them that Maxine was in the house, in the bath, when actually she was visiting her mother in Grimsby in Lincolnshire. So we don't know the exact events, but investigators do believe that some of his claims in interviews are true. For example, maybe he had been cleaning his dog at the time the girls passed by his house at 6:30. It could be true. And that one girl had been suffering from a mild nosebleed. Might have been true. But the cause of death, eventually for the girls, was asphyxiation. And Jessica's Nokia 6110 mobile phone was switched off at 6:45 p.m. So it's heartbreaking, isn't it, to think that these girls were alive and well at 5 minutes, having a brilliant time. Yeah, having a brilliant time at 5:04. And then just a couple of hours later, it seems like they were probably deceased and had been victim of, the most awful attack. It doesn't bear thinking about what they went through in their last moments. Police were suspicious of Huntley's account, and a single police officer had searched his house on the 5th of August, but no incriminating evidence was discovered. However, the officer noticed that there was clothing on the washing line, despite the fact it had been raining, and also the house was very clean. So in reference to the evident extensive cleaning of the house's interior, Ian Huntley said, "Excuse the dining room, we had a flood." But the officer was unconvinced by Huntley's claims, and he was suspicious of his agitated demeanour. So Huntley was a suspect right from day one. The house was scrubbed clean. There was a lingering smell of bleach and disinfectant in the air. And interviews that both Huntley and Carr made with the journalists that had gone to report on these missing girls were suspicious, and even the journalists, their spidey sense was tingling, because it's not only police, of course, that get instincts, but journalists do too. When they've been doing, crime reporting for a long time, they get an instinct, don't they? They get like a spidey sense, and this had happened in this instance. So let's have a look at their interviews. Ian first.
You're the school caretaker. The girls, Jessica and Holly, would know you, and they saw you on the front doorstep. What went on?
But I don't know the girls.
So notice he's very careful at the beginning to say, "Oh, I don't know the girls," but later, when he and Maxine were being interviewed, and they asked Maxine if the girls would have known about stranger danger, he jumped right in and said, "Oh, well, Holly probably would have gone quietly, but Jessica would have put up a fight." He's not supposed to know them. Don't forget, he worked at the college. He didn't work at the school. He supposedly never met them. And yet he jumped right in and said, "Oh, well, Holly would have gone quietly, but Jessica would have put up a fight." Well, nobody knew that more than him, did they?
I stood on the front doorstep grooming my dog down. She'd run away and come back a bit of a mess. They just came across and asked how Miss Carr was, as she used to teach them at St Andrews. I just said she weren't very good, as she hadn't got the job. And they just said, "Please tell her that we're very..."
Hang on, I'm trying to get the sound up, but
How did this?
I'm fine, very cheerful.
I can't.
Chatty. I didn't see anything untoward. Nobody hanging around. Just seemed like normal, happy kids.
Safe and well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you may, as it turned out, have been the last person to actually chat to them before they vanished.
Yeah, that's what it seems like.
And it's a mystery.
Absolutely, yeah.
Unsolved.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody around here, I mean, I've been speaking to a lot of people. And what they're saying is, while there's no news, then there's still that glimmer of hope. And that's basically all we're all hanging on to.
And there was nothing that Sunday evening that gave you a glimmer of suspicion that anything was wrong?
No, not at all.
You're the school caretaker.
The lies, the effortless lies. Let's just watch it one more time. I know, sorry, the sound's not very good.
You're the school caretaker. The girls, Jessica and Holly, would know you, and they saw you on the front doorstep. What went on?
The girl, I don't know the girls. I was stood on the front doorstep grooming my dog down. She'd run away and come back a bit of a mess. They just came across and asked how Miss Carr was, as she used to teach them at St Andrews. I just said she weren't very good, as she hadn't got the job. And they just says, please tell her that we're very sorry. And off they walked in the direction of the library over there.
How did they seem to you?
They seemed fine, very cheerful, happy, chatty. I didn't see anything untoward, nobody hanging around. Just seemed like normal, happy kids.
Safe and well?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you may, as it turned out, have been the last person to actually chat to them before they vanished.
Yeah.
Now, notice he's got his hands behind his back, because apparently he had some scratches. Why has he got his hands behind his back like that? Do you think maybe he's got scratches on his hands? He did have some scratches. He said it was the dog that had done it.
That's what it seems like.
And it's a mystery.
Absolutely, yeah.
Solved.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody around here, I've been speaking to a lot of people, and what they're saying is, while there's no news, then there's still that glimmer of hope. And that's basically all we're all hanging on to.
And there was nothing that Sunday evening that gave you a glimmer of suspicion that anything was wrong?
No, not at all.
You're the school caretaker.
So that's his interview. Let's have a look at Maxine's. Hopefully you can hear her a little bit better.
You knew the girls. What were they like? Tell us a bit about them.
Lovely, really bubbly girls. They're ever so funny, they're brilliant, they're kind to everybody. They wouldn't say a bad word about anybody. And they love their families and everything, which is why nobody believes that they would ever run away. They was very close to all their family.
Tell us something about this card you're holding.
This is something I'll probably keep for the rest of my life, I think. It's what Holly gave me on the last day of term. She was very, very...
She actually got a cross on as well, which is quite ironic, really, isn't it?
upset because I didn't get my job, and she just gave me this with a poem on the inside, saying to a special teaching assistant, really, and we'll miss her a lot, and we'll see her in the future. And that's the kind of girl she was. She was just lovely, really lovely.
That's the kind of girl she was. So that was quite significant. Everybody noticed that. I mean, sometimes, you know, you do sort of fall into that trap of, because the girls were missing and, you know, but it seemed very specific that that's the kind of girl she was, not that's the kind of girl she is. I wonder what happened to that card. I mean, I expect it was submitted for evidence. I don't know what will have happened to it in the end, if it'll still be there floating around as evidence somewhere, but bless.
Really very sweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any thoughts tonight? I mean, 11 days is a long time. I mean, if they could see you now, what would Maxine Carr say to Holly and Jessica?
Just get on a phone and just come home. Just come home. Or if...
See, she can't look at the camera there. Do you see that? She's not meeting his eyes. She's not meeting the camera's eyes. You know, wouldn't you? You'd just look straight at the camera and you'd say, come on, Holly and Jessica, if you can, please get on the phone, try and, or, you know, you'd direct that. That's an appeal. She cannot look the camera in the face or the journalist.
Somebody's got them. Just let them go. It doesn't matter where you let them go, as long as you just let them go and let them come home.
I will always think she knew then that they were dead. She didn't have anything to do with them being killed, but I don't think anything will ever convince me that she did not know. You can see it in her face. I'm sure she was really sorry about it, but let's just watch it again. It's just my opinion, that's all. I don't know. She wasn't found guilty.
You knew the girls. What
Well,
was it
not
like?
of
Tell us a bit about them.
Lovely, really bubbly girls. They're ever so
lying.
funny, brilliant, they're kind to everybody. They wouldn't say a bad word about anybody. And they love the families and everything, which is why nobody believes that they would ever run away. They was very close to all their family.
Tell us something about this card you're holding.
This is something I'll probably keep for the rest of my life, I think. It's what Holly gave.
Do you see what I'm saying about Maxine being quite childlike herself? I think that's what will have attracted someone like Ian Huntley to her. She's quite childlike, and also she was probably easily manipulated.
With me on the last day of term, she was very, very upset because I didn't get my job, and she just gave me this with a poem on the inside, saying to a special teaching assistant, really. And we'll miss her a lot, and we'll see her in the future. And that's the kind of girl she was. She was just lovely, really lovely.
That's really very sweet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Any thoughts tonight? I mean, 11 days is a long time. I mean, if they could see you now, what would Maxine Carr say to Holly and Jessica?
Just get on a phone and just come home. Just come home. Or if somebody's got them, just let them go. Doesn't matter where you let them go, as long as you just let them go and let them come home.
You knew the girls. What were they like?
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about them.
Lovely.
Again, we'll probably never know the true story. Only Maxine knows. Well, and Ian, of course, whether she knew more or didn't know more. Let's have a look at another interview now. So this is another journalist talking about what struck him as strange about Ian Huntley.
Ian Huntley didn't seem keen to talk. It slightly surprised me because normally I've found people are. Children are missing. People will help. And the first thing that seemed strange, I remember quite distinctly, was that I asked Maxine if at school they'd done stranger danger. Ian Huntley jumped in straight away and he answered the question. And he said that he thought Holly would probably get in the car and quietly go. But Jessica wouldn't. She'd put up a real fight and put up a real struggle.
That's obviously what happened. How would he even know that? Could not know that he didn't know them. He's 48 now. So I just want to say that house, College Close, it has been razed to the ground now. I think there's been a walkway put there or something, or a park, or I don't know what they've put there instead. But I do think, it's a good thing that they have, taken it down.
What I couldn't understand was why hadn't they mentioned the dog? It struck me as odd that two children wandering around on a sunny August day would come across a man washing a big hairy dog with soap and a hosepipe and wouldn't see the dog. I simply couldn't believe there were two children on earth who wouldn't see the dog. But when we asked if we could photograph Ian Huntley,
No, so this was him. Look, he looks like he's biting his nails. He's looking scared there, looking out. I think his hair must have greyed quite a bit just while all this was going on, because he knew he was good. He was just waiting to be arrested, really, and it affected his mental health at the time, or he said it did. So, but we'll see that in a moment.
That was the third thing that was very strange. He simply adamantly wouldn't be photographed. And those three things seemed to me to be very strange. As I was rolling them around in my head, I simply didn't believe what he was saying.
Yeah, now, of course, he was photographed and he was filmed, but he must have regretted that later, because he wasn't realising, you know, people would see him in Grimsby and think, oh, that's Ian Huntley, the man that RAP'd that young girl, or the man that broke into that woman's house, you know. So he was, you know, he was one of these sort of criminal masterminds, or, you know, like not, that think they're criminal masterminds, that we talk about quite a lot on my channel, people who think they're really clever, but actually they're not.
I didn't understand how he could know how they'd react, and I didn't believe what he'd said about the dog. And I started to think, well, he appears to be the last man to have seen them. In all likelihood, the person who's responsible for their disappearance or death will be someone living locally. And I don't think he's telling the truth.
So, as I say, journalists get a spidey sense just the same as police do. You know, you're reporting on true crime, etc., for a long time. You know, you start to develop a sense of when someone's lying, etc., I would imagine. So, on the 6th of August, Ian Huntley drove from Soham to Grimsby to pick up Maxine Carr. And shortly before they returned to College Close, a neighbour of Maxine Carr's mother saw the couple standing at the rear of the vehicle with the boot open, allegedly. According to her, a pale, shaking Huntley gazed into the boot for several moments while Maxine Carr stood alongside him, her head bowed and weeping. And when Huntley became of the neighbour's presence, he closed the boot abruptly. And then on the 23rd of July 2004, Maxine Carr, just before as the trial was coming up, Shirley Cat, Maxine Carr's mother, was sentenced to 6 months in jail for intimidating this witness during the trial. And her threats had nearly resulted in her retracting her statement at the time instead of testifying in court. Anyway, you know, so they're all right. She's just as bad, isn't she, the mother? Now, were Holly and Jessica in the boot of that car? Did Maxine Carr know more? I've got my own opinion about it, but we'll never know for certain. So don't forget what he said when he was interviewed. He said, I don't know the girls, even though later he said, oh yeah, Holly will have been quiet, but Jessica would have fought. I was stood on the front doorstep grooming my dog down. She'd run away and come back a bit of a mess. They just came across and asked how Maxine was. I just said she wasn't very good as she hadn't got the job, and they just said, please tell her we're very sorry. And off they walked in the direction of the library over there. That's what he said at the time. Ian Huntley's changed his story over and over again. In the end, he did admit that they came into the house, etc. I'm not going to go into all the changes of his story because that, again, would just go on forever. He changed it that often. Only he knows the real truth. So, as time went on and suspecting the children had been kidnapped, investigators questioned every registered sex offender in Cambridgeshire and neighbouring Lincolnshire. But of course, you know, Huntley should have been one of them, but he was from Grimsby and he hadn't been actually convicted. Anyway, so over 260 registered sex offenders across the UK and 15 high-risk Ps were also questioned and all eliminated from the investigation. They investigate the possibility they may have met someone they'd contacted via a chat room, but that was soon ruled out. And in the meantime, Huntley and Carr continued to be suspected. So police were now suspicious of Huntley's account. A single police officer searched his home, and as I explained earlier, nothing in particular found, but just suspicions of his demeanour. And he was asking police questions such as, how's the investigation going? How long does DNA evidence last for before it deteriorates? And also, one of the officers observed 3 vertical scratches on Huntley's left jaw, each measuring approximately 3 centimetres, which he claimed the dog had done. Anyway, on the 16th of August, 12 days after the children's disappearance, they were questioned by the police for approximately 7 hours. They each provided witness statements and were placed in a safe house. By this date, police had received information from several Grimsby residents who had recognised him in his interviews and recalled that he'd been accused of RAPE years earlier. Others said as well that, contrary to her claims, Maxine Carr had been in Grimsby on the night of the girl's disappearance and was not at home in Soham as she was claiming to the media. And then at about 12:30 p.m. on 17th of August, a 48-year-old gamekeeper named Keith Pryor discovered the bodies of both girls lying side by side in a 5-foot deep irrigation ditch close to a pheasant pen near the perimeter fence of RAF Leakenheath in Suffolk, 10 miles from Soham, or more than 10 miles. So he had noticed an unusual and unpleasant smell in the area several days earlier, and he decided to investigate the cause. And something I want to say here is those girls had been posed. They'd been posed, and that is a sure sign of a fledgling serial killer. So when they were found, they'd been missing for 13 days. So obviously they were in an advanced state of decomposition. Also, in an attempt to destroy forensic evidence, someone had attempted to burn both bodies. Now, Huntley later said that it was Maxine who told him to do that. Again, that's probably something we'll never know the truth of. So obviously investigators rapidly deduced who they were and that they had not died where their bodies had been discovered. And numerous hairs later determined to belong to one of the girls was discovered on a tree branch close to the location of the girls' bodies. So the following day, a press statement was released, and the police said they had to do formal identification, but they were as sure as they could be it was the girls. Now, bearing in mind, during this time, as they'd been being interviewed, Carr had said quite a lot about the girls, Maxine Carr. So she had discussed them as Holly being the more feminine of the two, Jessica more of a tomboy, and Jessica apparently seldom wore a skirt. And Maxine Carr had said that Jessica had expressed a desire to be her bridesmaid at her own future wedding, and saying that Jessica had said she would wear a dress for that occasion. Dear me. Anyway, by the second week of the children's disappearance, Huntley had begun to lose weight and was displaying visible signs of insomnia. He was getting increasingly anxious, and his erratic behaviour and apparent distress led to him being prescribed antidepressants on the 13th of August. Then, on the 16th of August, my birthday, at the Soham Village College where Huntley worked, in a bin in a hanger, the charred remains of the girls' football shirts were found. And I do have a photo to show you of that. So now the bodies had been found. Now the shirts are so sad, isn't it, to see that? So these were found in a hangar at the college that Huntley was the caretaker of. And he had told the police, when the police first searched the college, he told the police he didn't have a key, which obviously patently he did have a key. So fibres recovered from these garments were a precise match to samples retrieved from Huntley's body and clothing, as well as from 5 college clothes, and his fingerprints were recovered from the bin. His Ford Fiesta was examined, and this revealed the car had also been recently extensively cleaned, but traces of a mixture of brick dust, chalk and concrete of the same type used to pave the road leading to where the girls' bodies were discovered was found around the wheel arches and on the pedals. A cover from the rear seat was missing, and the lining of the boot had been removed and replaced with a section of household carpet. So then they're arrested. The police, after the discovery of the children's clothes, they finally arrested Ian and Maxine. Both were initially arrested on suspicion of abduction and murder. During initial questioning, Huntley refused to answer questions and appeared evasive, confused, emotionally detached, occasionally drooling during police attempts to question him in an effort to feign mental illness. So this is a bit like what he did when his wife left him. And this left police with no option but to refer him to a mental hospital to undergo a psychological evaluation. By contrast, Maxine Carr quickly confessed to detectives she had lied about her whereabouts and her partner's actions on the 4th of August. And she said that she claimed that Huntley had said to her in a phone call to have seen the 2 girls and that he admitted they had been in the house. And he said the children came into the house to sort out the nosebleed. He claimed Jessica had sat on their bed as he had helped Holly control the bleeding from her nose before both girls left the home. He said he had been falsely accused once before and he would be again, and he claimed this would make him have a nervous breakdown. That, according to Maxine, is why she agreed to, go along with his false story. So after she was informed of the discovery of the children's bodies and the evidence of his guilt, including his fingerprints being recovered from the bin in which the clothes had been found, she burst into tears, shouting, "No, he can't have been. It can't have been. He hasn't done it." This reminds me a little bit of Stefan Stearns and Madeline Soto's mother, Jen. I don't think Jen had anything to do with Madeline's death or even the hiding of her body, but it's like she was in denial. She believed. It's hard to explain, isn't it, how these women can be so stupid. That is it a result of years of coercive control. I mean, Ian was abusive towards Maxine. He had a history of being abusive towards all his partners. So maybe just ground her down so much. I don't know, or maybe she genuinely did believe him. So she remained initially emotionally attached to Huntley, and she professed her belief in his innocence to both the police and her family. So he was charged with 2 counts of murder while he was in Rampton Secure Home Hospital. And anyway, finally, he was released from the hospital, and Carr was also charged with attempting to pervert the course of justice and 2 counts of assisting an offender. Now, while she was on remand in Holloway Prison, she regularly inquired as to his welfare, and she wrote several letters professing her love for him. She only severed contact with him in December 2002 during the trial. So the jury deliberated for 4 days before reaching their verdicts against both defendants. On the 17th of December 2003, they returned a majority verdict of guilty on 2 counts of murder against Huntley, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of imprisonment to be imposed by the Lord Chief Justice. Carr pleaded guilty to the charge of perverting the course of justice and not guilty to the charge of assisting an offender. The jury accepted her insistence that she had only lied to the police and media in order to protect him, because prior to their arrest she had believed his claims of innocence. As such, she was found not guilty of assisting an offender, and she was only sentenced to 3.5 years in prison for perverting the course of justice. She is now free, and she has been free for a long, long time. And it's said she's now married with children of her own. However, her identity is protected her. So now he could. Ian Huntley did not receive a lifetime tariff, but the judge, Mr. Justice Moses, announced that he must remain in prison till he's served a minimum of 40 years. So no parole eligibility till 2042. So he's unlikely to ever come out of prison. I mean, he'll only be 68 then. I mean, it's, he could still have another 10, 15, 20 years in him. But I think the idea is that he won't ever come out. So he avoided eligibility for a whole life tariff, as the passing of the Criminal Justice Act 2003 was 1 day after his conviction, thus taking effect on the 18th of December and only applying to murders after this date. Now, I think it's fair to say that he's not had a great time in prison. He's been attacked many times. He's tried to take his own life at least once. I'm not going to go into all those things, but good. I'm glad he's pretty miserable, to be honest. Maxine was released on probation from Her Majesty's prison. I can't say Majesty as far as Charles is concerned. Foston Hall Prison on 14th of May 2004 after serving a total of 21 months imprisonment. And that included the 16 months she'd been detained while on remand. So she actually only did 5 months. Is that what they were saying? Anyway, she was given a secret identity to protect her from threats of attack from vengeful members of the public, in addition to being provided with a new home. Oh my God, in an undisclosed location. So you can work really hard all your life and then you're in danger of being homeless, no help for you. But you do what she's done, you come out, you get given a new home. There's something wrong, isn't there? At the time, Carr was one of 4 former prisoners to be given a new identity upon release. And she won an injunction granting her lifelong anonymity on the grounds that her life would also otherwise be in danger. And the costs of imposing this order have been reported by differing tabloid newspapers as being between £1 million and £50 million. Now, bear in mind, this woman who wants to remain anonymous, she tried to write a book and get it published. So, I'm sorry, I would say fuck off, Maxine. Anyway, at least a dozen women have been falsely identified as being her and either persecuted or physically attacked due to false stories speculating as to her whereabouts and new identity, which have been printed in tabloid publications. So, shortly after her release from prison, Carr and her family contacted a Tyneside-based publishing company with a view to publishing her autobiography. Fuck off. Gosh, sorry for the language, but I'm so angry about that. How dare she? And then she says she wants her anonymity. Oh my God, but she wants to make money out of it. She wants to her life story, she was only 22, 23. Oh my God, what have you done in your life, Maxine? Oh yeah, you've helped in the murder of 2 young girls. If that's not really something to publicise, fuck off. Sorry, but really, fuck off. Anyway, luckily they withdrew their offer after a feature on BBC Radio Newcastle prompted scores of complaints from the public. So Huntley has been attacked many times in prison and has attempted to take his own life on at least one occasion. He's said to be a shadow of his former self. Let's hope so, because as I say, when Holly and Jessica were found, they had been posed. I think this is a sure sign that Ian Huntley would have carried on offending, not only sex attacks but murders. He got a taste. He was getting a taste for it. He enjoyed it. I think he enjoyed the limelight as well afterwards. As far as Maxine's concerned, I don't think she'll ever offend again. I don't think she's a danger in that way, but I do feel that she knew more about this. So to finish in this video, I just want to talk a little bit about Ian Huntley's daughter, Samantha Brian. Now, let's have a look at her with some positivity. We've always got to try and find some positivity. So this is Samantha. Very beautiful. She does look like Ian, I think. But, you know, she's got all his feet, but they're all put together in a nice way with her. I suppose that's her mum's input. So this is Samantha. Now look at this picture. So this is Ian Huntley with Katie, her mother. Now, remember, I don't know if you watch my channel on a regular basis, you'll have seen that I've, you know, done videos about twonks like him before. This with the arm around the neck, to me, it's a dead giveaway. If I'm telling you, if you're a girl or a boy, really, if anybody, if your partner, when they put their arm around you, that's how they put their arm around you, not round your waist, not holding your hand. But look at that. That is, you are mine. That's not, I love you. That's not, oh, come on, let's get close. Oh, that is, you belong to me. You belong to me. And I've seen so many photos, and I've experienced this many, many years ago when I was young. With well, I was young as well, maybe 13, 14, with a boyfriend who I can still remember his name was Benny. Whenever we were walking along, he would always put his arm around me like that, round my neck, you know, and I used to, why is he doing that? But yeah, that is a sure bad sign when somebody, that is not a sign of affection. It's not a sign of love. That's a sign of possession. If you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend or who does anything, that's how they demonstrate touching closeness. You want to try and get out of there quick, because that's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. Okay, so we're going to have a look at Samantha, because I do believe that her story gives us the exact opposite vibe from Ian Huntley's story. Hers is an example of bravery and resilience, not of sort of hate and abuse and, you know, cruelty. And that, of course, the same for that, bravery and resilience, is Holly and Jessica's families. Their stories are of bravery and resilience as well. So they're all victims of the evil that lived inside Ian Huntley. Not only Holly and Jessica, the 2 little girls he so callously denied the rest of their life story. You know, it's just like, oh, what, you're having a good time, you're enjoying your life. Whoops, no, you're not. So these are like ripples in a pond extending out until they themselves decide to take control. They've taken their lives back from this individual. Let's have a look. Now, of course, unfortunately, Holly and Jessica cannot take their lives back. But these people, like their families, Huntley's daughter, they have taken their lives back. This is his daughter, bless her.
What he did was unthinkable. Absolutely no forgiveness at all.
In July 2016, the Mail on Sunday revealed that Soham child killer Ian Huntley had a secret daughter called Samantha Brian. Samantha only discovered the appalling truth 4 years earlier when, aged 14, she came across a story about Huntley online, which was accompanied by a picture of herself and her mother. Now Samantha wants to find out what really happened.
Imagine that, you're doing a project at school and you Google it and it turns out that's your dad. Oh my God, that poor girl.
To Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman, the 10-year-old girls her father murdered in 2002, a crime that horrified the nation.
I decided to write to my biological father, Ian Huntley, because it's now been 20 years since his conviction, and I believe that it is time that he finally told us the truth about what happened to Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. My fear is that he will take the truth to the grave with him. Closure is a big word, but I think in just letting people know what happened might help in some way. I don't think he should ever be freed. What he did was unthinkable, and for that I don't think he deserves to be let out. Absolutely no forgiveness at all. Being Ian Huntley's daughter has impacted my life in many different ways. My childhood was hugely impacted by this. My relationships, work, friendships. I suffered nightmares from when I was...
I just can't imagine how that would feel for this poor girl to find out that her father was Ian Huntley. You know, it's bad enough for some children know right from the get-go, don't they? But to find out like that, it just must have been awful. But she just comes over as so lovely, so mature. You know, how did he manage to produce her?
I was young up until this day. You know, I have people shouting at me in the street or confronting me in my workplace about who my father is, or wrongly mistaking my mum for Maxine Carr. It's had a very big impact. I think about what happened to Holly and Jessica far more often than what people would think I do. To not know what really happened, it deeply upsets me, and I can only imagine how not knowing the full truth impacts not just myself but the families as well.
When his case came to trial, Huntley suggested the girls' deaths were accidental. His refusal to tell the truth has left Holly and Jessica's parents in a torment of uncertainty as to what really happened in their daughter's final minutes.
When I was 11, that was when I found out who I thought was my biological father wasn't. My mum sat me down on her bed and explained to me that I had two dads and that my biological father was a bad man, and at the time that was all I was really aware of. I was 14, I believe, when I was sat in class. We was Googling the crime rates in the area, and that's when I saw the article come up. I didn't pay any attention to the article until I saw a very blurred out photo of me and my mum. And straight away I recognised the clothes that we were wearing. And I remember very clearly having that photo taken. And so I left school, I went home and confronted my mum about it, and she told me that that was who my biological father was.
God.
If she'd have told me who he was when I was sat on her bed at 11, it would have been far too much for an 11-year-old girl to take in. So I am glad that she tried to keep it as hidden as she could.
Yeah, I feel for her mum, because how do you tell someone? You know, just so difficult. When is the right time? You know, she sat her on her bed and told her that her dad was not her biological dad. But then how do you turn around then and say, well, no, your biological dad murdered two 10-year-old girls and was a serial sex offender and probably would have ended up being a serial killer? How do you tell that to someone? Anyway, she was lucky that she never had anything to do with him, because I tell you what, if they would have remained together and he wouldn't have, you can imagine that he's a man. She wouldn't have been safe when she got older, when she was 10 years old. He seemed to like 10-year-old girls. I don't feel he's a person that would have stopped short of his own daughter.
I mean, obviously the intention was there for her to hide it until I was older than 14. Fate had other ideas. Before it became public knowledge, I'm not too sure how other people found out. I don't know if it was they maybe saw the same photo and recognised me or recognised my mum.
Yeah, that's it. He is her biological father, but he is not her father, her dad. He is not her dad in any way, shape or form.
The main comment that I used to get was, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Oh.
Which has always cut very deep with me, because I am the absolute opposite. There was a point when I was younger where I worried that everyone would think that and I would become isolated. Even with relationships, I've had people leave me and make comments about him and my connection to him. It was hard. I'm still very much trying to process my emotions related to this specifically. I still find it very hard to deal with. And this is also part of the reason that I wrote to him as well, because I feel like I need to fully process this just to move on. I don't want to keep feeling how I'm feeling. So for me, it is that closure as well. Dear Ian, I am writing to you to ask if you would consider meeting me. You won't realise this, but things have been very difficult for me through the years because of our connection. I have a lot of questions I want to ask you, as I feel I don't have a true picture of who you are due to things I have been told by others. I'm pleading with you to finally reveal the truth about the murders of Holly Wells and Jessica Chapman. I'd like him to consider meeting me. Obviously, I've written requesting his approval. I believe being sat face to face with him will allow me to fully accept what is and move forward. And I also hope to find out the truth about what really happened and try and give Holly and Jessica's parents that bit of closure as well. I think we all need it. To sit in front of him face to face, I believe, will give me the closure to move on and fully come to terms with who he is, what he's done. And if I can get the truth off him at the same time, I think that'll help a lot more people than just.
Oh, okay, I think that's the end of it. So yeah, she gives a positive, try and take some positives out of that. That's one good thing that Ian Huntley managed to produce in his life. I think she'll be a valuable member of society. The world needs more people like Samantha. And another positive thing, going back to Holly's parents, is of course Holly had a brother, Oliver, who is now an adult. And he's now expecting his second child. So Kevin and Nicola, Holly's parents, I don't feel myself filling up. At least they have a young grandson, and now they've got another grandchild on the way. That's some positivity. Thank God for that. And it must, as much as it must hurt that they've been robbed of that with Holly, they've been robbed of seeing her get married, having children, etc., or knowing what the woman, what kind of woman she would have become. She'll be forever 10 years old, won't she? But still, I just think at least this is positive. So Kevin and Nicola Wells have a young grandson and another on the way. And of course, their daughter Holly and best friend Jessica were killed in 2002. Mr. Wells is walking the Great Wall of China to raise cash for bereavement charity. This is what I mean. Kevin is just, he's just put all his energy into doing other things. That's his way of coping. And in a rare interview, he said, "We will never forget Holly, but life does move on." It does. Life, it carries on, doesn't it? No matter what happens, it's like you find it difficult to move on, but the whole world is moving on. So gradually, you have to either move on with it, or of course, some people can't quite manage that. I know that does happen too. But one way or another, you owe it to the person you've lost, I think, to live, because they would like to live if they had the chance. And that counts for people who lose through normal bereavement, like your parents or your grandparents. You owe it to people who have died, if it's through illness, or you owe it to them to carry on living. You really do, but just trying to make a difference. We're all just here for a moment, really. I mean, it is just such a short time that we're here, and some people, of course, a lot short time than others. And for that, at least while we're here, we have to try and leave some positive impact. So he said the intensity of your grief does diminish as the years pass. So, you could see how blasted he was with grief at that press conference originally. But Jessica's parents, Sharon and Les Chapman, they've rarely spoken publicly. They've dealt with it in a different way. We're all different. So they became grandparents for the first time 13 years after their daughter died. So I wonder how it's been for Oliver, because I'm not sure how old Oliver will be now. But it must have been quite difficult for Oliver, her brother, because he's got like all the responsibility, if you like, now of, for his parents. It'd be like, I bet he felt like a bit under pressure, I don't mean they'd have made him feel like that, but you think, oh my God, I'm the only child my parents have got left now. You'd feel like you'd want to make them proud. I mean, that's a beautiful picture, isn't it? With the poppies. And Kevin looks different in his face there. I don't know how old this photo is, but so yeah. And when was this article? Don't know when this article was. But this is 2015, so they may have other grandchildren by now. It just popped up while I was doing some research. I didn't know this, but so he said, after losing Holly, Nicola and I both witnessed and experienced the effects that bereavement and the grieving process can have on your life. So he's using that experience to help other people, and that's good. That's all you can do, is make the best of things. What, you get dealt cards in life. You just have to make the best of the cards you're dealt. You owe it to the person you've lost to do the best you can to keep, to honour their memory, etc. Do you see what I'm saying? Am I making sense? I'm not saying I've always done that in my life. I lost my best friend when she was only 19. I think I was 19. Gosh, it's that long ago now, but it's like you do feel like the world should just stop. It's like, don't you know that my best friend's dead? Why are you all just carrying on as if she unfortunately died in a traffic accident? But yeah, so she was denied all those things. All she ever wanted was to get married and have children. She was denied all those things, but not for the same malevolent reason. It was a traffic accident. The guy who ran her over, it wasn't his fault. It seems like she didn't look properly before she stepped out. She was distracted. She'd had an argument with her boyfriend. It's a bit of a long story, but it is, you know, I do talk about that in my book, Confessions of a Spanish Teacher, because obviously that was a massive, had a massive impact on my life. And, you know, since then, for a long time, I couldn't look forward to Christmas because it was coming up to Christmas. And she had been looking forward to Christmas so much. It was all she was talking about. And she never got to see that Christmas. And in fact, that was the day that the her parents had to make the decision to turn off the life support machine, actually on Christmas Day. So for a long, long time, I couldn't even look forward to Christmas. And I don't think that changed till I actually had my son, because children obviously make you look more forward to Christmas, don't they? You know, but these things affect you, but you shouldn't let, because no, I'm talking to myself now. I think I'm telling myself off because I don't always make the best of every day or make the most of life. And but really, for Elaine's sake, you know, I should, because I'm lucky I'm here and she's not. So anyway, I'm getting all a bit philosophical now. So yeah, all those, the family and his daughter, they're victims of the evil that lived inside Ian Huntley. And not only the two little girls that he callously denied the rest of their life story. Ripples in a pond, as I said earlier, extending out. But one day they themselves take control, take it back, take their lives back from this man. So that's a very sad story of the Soham murders. 10-year-old Holly and Jessica, forever 10. A story, a sad story of how evil came to a small English village where nothing like that ever happened, under the guise of Ian Huntley, possessed by the devil. I do believe in this possession. This man, he was evil. He was a fledgling serial killer and a child abuser. So my final thoughts go out to the families. I hope they have managed to cope over these 22 years with the loss of their beautiful daughters. So they've been cheated of so many things, and it must be really galling to know that the things they've been cheated of with for their daughters, Maxine Carr has been able to do. Get married, have children, be an adult. Anyway, so go, you know, there's nothing we can do about that. But my thoughts and prayers are also with Samantha, of course, Ian's daughter. She did not choose her biological dad, but in spite of him, she seems to be a better person than either he or Maxine Carr could ever hope to be. So fly free as well, Holly and Jessica, together and best friends forever. And I will see you really soon, as always, in the next video. And until then, may your God go with you. I'm just going to play a few pictures to finish off, and rest in peace. Fly free, Holly and Jessica.